Alright, so first thing, jack up your car and hit all of the bolts you need to take off with PB Blaster, and then let it sit for 10 minutes. It'll make your life way easier. Just do it. So this is the one that actually adjusts your camber. Paint works sporadically, so I just grab a razor blade and I etch into the stud, the actual bolt, not the nut, which way is facing up, so that when I put it back in, I can make sure that way is up. When you're lowering or lifting a car, you're gonna have it be off a little bit, but that's a pretty good starting place. And if you're just replacing without changing the geometry, you'll be able to get it almost dead on, and so you won't have to go get another alignment. I would recommend getting alignment anytime you do suspension work. Besides, well, anytime you do suspension work where you're actually taking off the suspension and geometry adjustments. If you're just doing like sway bar end links, you don't have to get a realignment. With this, I'm planning on getting it realigned because it is my daily driver and I have brand new tires, so I want to make sure my new tires don't wear out because I got some goofy wear on these tires that were new last year. So my preference in a daily driver is to have relatively soft struts and springs with stiff sway bars, instead of having really hard, stiff struts and springs. If you're not having a race car, you don't need coilovers. Unless you want the adjustability, sure. And really, unless you're going to drop a couple grand on coilovers, any coilover you get is not going to be that great. There's just not enough adjustability for it to be good. Unless you're just wanting to slam your car, then go for it. My advice would be to get a good set of struts, whatever is in your price range. I would recommend KYBs because they're basically kind of the standard. They work really well and they have a good longevity. And then buy lowering springs to put on that strut. Now, Engineering Explained and other people will say that you don't want to pair a strut with a spring that's not made for each other because you'll get messed up dampening. And anyway, I don't really care about that. In a daily driver, you want to have some level of comfort. If you don't, fine, ignore what I'm saying. But I like to have a little bit of comfort because I don't like getting my back broken when I go over potholes or just the seams in the road. I've driven a car like that and it was really fun for a while, but as a daily driver, when I drive 60 miles plus a day, I don't want that. For my evening, I wouldn't mind it in the morning for my morning commute, but my afternoon commute, when I'm already tired and broken, I just kind of want to relax in the car, and so that's my preference. So, get good struts and pair them with a lowering spring, and then spend the money that you would spend on coilovers on really fat sway bars and really hard polyurethane or minimum aluminum sway bar end links. Now, I've talked about this in previous videos, but this is the goldenness of a lowered car. You'll still get good rebound on your struts. You won't have freaking hardwood suspension, but you'll still be able to corner at speed and not have body roll. So that's kind of the point of most people that want to do coilovers, is they don't want the body roll. But if you just get a larger sway bar and harder sway bar end links, you will get minimal body roll, yet still have good rebound and dampening on your struts, so that it's not killing you when you go over little stuff in the road, but you can still go way fast around corners. So that's just my 2 cents. Some people get upset that I ramble, but I'm just kind of trying to share all of the info that I have accumulated over the years with some of you guys, if you're interested. That would be my opinion. Obviously, coilovers are really good if you buy good ones. Otherwise, one more input in coilovers that I will pass along from Rob Carlson, a Pro 2 drift driver. He said, only buy coilovers if you're going to use the adjustments. If you're not going to adjust them, just buy Megans, because they're all the same if you're not going to use the adjustments. So if you're building a race car and you want camber and caster adjustments, buy some good 3-ways. Otherwise, if you're just looking to get low, buy lowering springs, not coilovers, because you'll just be miserable, and there's a good chance you'll try and trade them in about 6 months. So anyway, I'm done. Back to this. So I'm lowering mine 3 inches today, and I'm very excited for it. So okay, so here is the difference between an Outback strut and just a Legacy strut. Knuckle mounting point to spring perch on a Legacy is about 5 inches. On an Outback is 6 inches, just over. So there's about an inch difference between a Legacy and an Outback strut, plus I had another 1.5 inches of lift in the front. You know you're low enough when you can't get your jack out. That's the real gauge. That's what we're looking for right there. Oh yeah. Check out that fitment. You can't see it over here because there's no fender obviously, but heck yes. That is perfect. That'll still give me some suspension travel while looking freaking ouch. Awesome. Okay, we're rubbing pretty good right there. And again back here. Okay, I can deal with that. Look at that poke. That is perfect. I like it a lot. Cool. So adapters or even wheel spacers get a really bad reputation because people don't install them correctly. Now, I have run 2-inch wheel spacers, 5x100 to 5x100, on my daily driven cars for the last, since 2013. So the last 4 years, and I've never had an issue with them falling off. So, I think that has to do with the way that I install them properly. So, what you do, you go and you get a real torque wrench, you torque them in proper sequence, a little bit at a time, to anywhere between 80 and 90 foot-pounds. I have my torque wrench set to 84 foot-pounds right now. So you incrementally torque them, not all at once on one. And then, once you have that torqued, you put on your new wheel and you torque that to the same torque. And then a week or 2 weeks later, you take the tires off again and you re-torque in sequence every lug nut to 84 foot-pounds again, or whatever you're going to torque it to. Okay? By doing that, your chances of having a wheel fall off or something like that are way lower. So, I don't have a problem running adapters or spacers because I feel like I do everything I can to make sure that it's on right. So that's I can't stress enough how important it is to do that. Or with brand new rims, same thing with brand new rims. They have like a break-in period where you need to retorque them after 500 miles or 1,000 miles. Anyway, just do it. Don't forget about it. I mean, this is what keeps your car going. Tires and wheels and rims and everything that attaches to it. So, don't skimp out on it. You might regret it. Alright, so here's the difference between the rears. Again, it's going to be about the same as the front, but we'll measure it again. Spring perch to the upper part of the bolt hole is about 5 inches. On the Legacy Outback is about 6.5 inches. Now obviously the spring perches are in kind of a different spot, but it's about an inch and a half difference. There is a good gap there, and then I had a 1-inch spacer on top of these ones, and so I'm going down again about 3 inches. These springs are STI springs, but not Impreza STI springs. They're STI spec springs from a JDM Legacy STI. They aren't made for as much weight as the back of a wagon has, and so they're going to sag a little bit. I think I'm going to have a little bit of butt sag, but I might mediate that with a little bit of a spacer as well. We'll see. I'm going to put these on first. The rears are easy enough to do. It's just 3 bolts and they drop down, and there's no camber or caster adjustment in there, and so I'm going to put them on, see how much it sags, and put a spacer in there if I need to. But for now, I'm just going to leave them. So these STI springs I got off eBay, again from a JDM Legacy STI spec BD5 or BE5. Anyway, one of these, but a sedan in basically what was the spec B before they did spec B. Okay, so yeah, because they're sedan springs, it sat way too low and was just resting on my tires, and it looked really cool, but it didn't match the front, and I can't get the front to go any lower. So I swapped on my lifted top hats, and I'm gonna put in my 1-inch spacer, and I'm hoping that a 1-inch lift in the rear will be enough to kind of even it out. It's not gonna be slammed, but it's still gonna be a usable wagon because I do put engines and transmissions in the back of it, so I need it to be able to not bottom out on me. So that's what we're doing. So it's still pretty low. It looks awesome though. So this is it with 1-inch spacers. It usually has that little rubber piece there, and that flew off on my test drive down the street. Both of them. So there's a good finger width. It gets tight right at the apex, which is pretty dang good fitment. I just need to roll the fender so that I'm not smelling like rubber everywhere I go and wearing through my tires. Unfortunately, I am in the circumstance of most people who don't own a fender roller. Now, I had somebody set up who has one and was gonna let me use it, but that was gonna be next week because my adapters came like 5 days early, and so I'm definitely gonna have to do something about that today, which might end up being the Mega Ghetto Roll, aka jack handle. We'll see. We'll see. I'm gonna take a break and cool down a bit. Let's see what I can do. Looking really good. It's lower in the rear right now because I'm on a hill, and so the front, I don't know, I'm hoping the front will settle a little bit more, because that's with an inch spacer in the rear and nothing up front, and it's still saggy butt. So we'll see. Either way, I like it. It's kind of nice having it so low as I walk up to it. Going 10 miles an hour. Oh. So, first try with the jack handle was unsuccessful. See the damage. Hardcore. Yeah, right there. Bummer. There goes some paint, huh? Dang it. I thought he was done. Golly. Well, this gonna have a hard time. Needs to come up and out. I need a fender roller, basically. Maybe I'll see if there's anybody on. I don't know. Maybe I just won't drive this until I get the fender rolled, because it's undrivable. There's my little flappies that popped off immediately. Pretty sweet though. It's always a little nitpicky thingies at the end that make it fun, right? Dead. Dead. Are these original Subaru? KYBs. I don't know what was original equipment, so. Oh, it looks good, so good. So good. Got a little bit of camber in the back. Maybe it needs some more, huh? Just tuck them up inside. That might be an option. An option I've never considered before because I think it's kind of stupid, but you know, Desperate times call for desperate measures. Oh, looks like it's got some camber on it now. I guess my car in general has camber in the rear, and they can't straighten it out. So my old all-terrains were getting jacked because of it, but looks good. Gonna look better when I'm done with it, but good start. I'm surprised. Wasn't thinking I was gonna like those rims as much as I do. And now apparently I don't drive a clown car, so fits in with the neighborhood slightly better. Okay, so it's later in the day. I took a pretty long break. I went at it with my mini sledge and I massaged it up a little bit farther, and still was having a lot of rubbing, and so I went ahead and rethought my suspension a little bit. So I'll show you the remnants of what I did. Over here you can see my brand new Legacy struts and my Outback springs. So Legacy struts and the lowered springs was too low in the rear. Just wasn't there for it. I put a 1-inch spacer block on top and it was still too low. Way disproportional from the front. So instead I grabbed the lowered springs and mated them to the Outback struts and threw it on, and that gives me a proportional amount of low to fit my wide tires. So I'm happy with that. The springs are stiffer, and so I should have a little bit better handling slightly, but mostly just I wanted it to match, and I wanted it to be useful still, because this is my parts hauler, and if it was that low as it was before, it looked awesome, but it definitely can't put a 300-pound engine in the back and still be drivable. So this is my end game. Now, like I said and showed you, those struts were totally blown. Not totally, but basically blown. They're worn out. And so I just have them on there for now just to be sure that it's going to work. And so I'm going to go ahead and order some Outback struts and then put them up with my new top hats and lowered springs and all of that, and I'll be set. So that's kind of the way to go. Yeah, I was surprised with how different the rear suspension of a sedan versus an Outback is, and how much of a difference there is, even with a 1-inch spacer. So I probably would have been fine if I was using standard Legacy springs, but because I was using the STI spec dropped springs, it was just too much. So if you're gonna do it, that's kind of what I would suggest, unless you're gonna go really low. But if you're gonna go really low, you got to figure out something to do in the front, because the front doesn't go as low as the rear. So that's it. That's all for this episode. I can't test drive it because I'm blocked in, but that's okay. Anyway, yeah, say hit the subscribe button. I got a lot more cool stuff coming for this car, and so yeah, subscribe to see more. We'll see you next time.